we're going to race that. Welcome to this episode of Heartbreak Garage, and tonight I want to be working on one of my motorbikes or my Escort, but instead we have my mother's chosen mode of transport. Now this is the Fiat Punto, and it's got a little 8 valve 1 litre or something engine in it, and the clutch is gone, so we're going to have to change the clutch. I can't let my mum down, but I don't really want to do it, but we're going to have to do it quick because she needs her mobility back. This is what we've got going on. We've got ourselves the finest quality money can buy LUK clutch, and we've got a tiny thrust bearing, that is tiny. We've got the centre plate or the friction plate, and it's important to note that these only go in one way, so you can see gearbox side South Africa there. That means that points towards the gearbox. We've got the cover plate that's ready to go on, and we need to clean that before we fit it with a bit of something to get the grease off. We've also got a new clutch arm or fork, and we've got some new bushes for it because while you're in there, why not? It's like 30 something quid from Nick at Euro Car Parts, and it's just all the right stuff. So that's what we've got, and that's what we're going to get into. Process starts up here above the gearbox, and we're going to remove the battery, the gear linkages, the clutch slave cylinder, and all the bits and bobs, and get that all unbolted and sorted. And then once we've done that, we'll send her up. I can just see in there, I don't know whether you can pick that up, it's got a coolant leak as well, so we're going to have to order a thermostat housing, but that's a job for another day. So with the battery out now, we can see the top of the gearbox, and we've got some hydraulics and switches and gear linkages and stuff, and yeah, so we're going to get all that off. Then we're going to get the top bell housing bolts undone, and then we'll take the gearbox out. I have adorned my new head torch off my father-in-law, and now we're getting all in there. I've unplugged the reversing light sensor, and now I'm taking off the slave cylinder. Two 13mm bolts, and off it comes. Now she's a plastic item, and there it is. You've got to be careful no one puts their foot on the clutch when this is off, otherwise disaster will happen. What are we on to next? The main earth lead for the car. So what I suspect has happened is that the release bearing has collapsed and burnt a hole through, well, ground its way through the cover plate, but we'll know when we get her off. So now we've got the gear linkages, one on the top and one down the back, off, and I find what's really good for getting them off is these bent needle nose pliers, the big variety. They're useful, and they get that straight off there. So now we're done with that, we need to get the mounting bracket off and undo the bell housing bolts at the top. Got the top bell housing bolts out down there, right in there where the torch is shining on, and we're leaving all the wire in there, just unbolting the bracketry, because the plan is when you're doing jobs like this, you want to leave as much in there as you can, and just enough, take just enough out to get out what you want to get out, so you can do it as fast as you can. So the top bell housing bolts are out. Now I'm going to crack off, get that wire out of the way, the gearbox mount bolts, so they're not tight, so when I send it up they're easy enough to undo, and I'm not swinging around like a madman trying to undo them. Left hand ball joint out, and we're going to do the right hand one, but they're awfully tight, so we're going to, with this chain, our special tool, Cody.
Hey.
2 long bars. I'm going to show you how to do it a bit easier. So we'll take our chain and wrap it round the lower arm. There we go. Go on, Cody. Just in there. In there, yeah. There we go. So we've got the ball joints out. You'll have to excuse me, my brother's welding up a friend's van making a terrible noise. So we're going to pull the drive shafts out now, both sides, and you can see this one has been weeping a bit, so we'll order a new oil seal. We're not going to do that tonight, we just need to get it back on the road, but we'll remember it, and we'll do the thermostat, because you can see that's been leaking as well. So anyway, so we'll get that off, we'll get the exhaust off, we'll undo the bellows and bolts, and everything will be beautiful. They can be really awkward, these drive shafts, when you're trying to pull them out, because they've got a little wire clip on the end that holds them in to stop them coming out like that. But then you've got to get them out, so they're just hard. So we got the drive shaft all pulled out of the other side, and I tied it back to the ramp with my cam lock to stop it partying too much with the drive shaft oil seal, because otherwise it'll ruin it. Now what I'm going to do is undo this stabiliser up here and take the starter motor out. It's a prime example of the type of thing I mean. This mount here, this gearbox dog bone, you don't need to take it off all the way, just undo the bolts that hold it to the gearbox, leave the rest there. We've got 1 bolt there left now in the bell housing and 2 bolts in the gearbox mount, and we can start getting her out. Yep, thrust bearing's completely collapsed, bearing's gone, and it's worn a nice groove in the plate there. Inspect the damage as predicted. Can't get it out. The bearing is not bearing anymore, and the cover plate has got a big ground mark in it. The actual clutch itself doesn't look bad, it's not been got overheated or anything like that. It's pretty good, but the old thrust bearing, she's had it. So we're going to change the bearing and the fork. The flywheel itself I've cleaned up, and she's really good, marvellous, no problems there at all. So we'll crack on, get the gearbox cleaned up, and I'll be back shortly. So I'm going to remove this circlip, focus. I'm going to remove this circlip here, take the arm off and replace the lever. So I believe I've found the key to the failure that has caused the bearing to crap out on us. And these bushes here hold in the arm that operates the pivot for the thrust bearing, and there was an awful lot of corrosion in there, and it wasn't letting the arm fully return. It was constantly under tension, which would mean that the thrust bearing is constantly meshed with the front of the clutch. So when your foot's off the clutch, that bearing's not supposed to spin. When it's constantly meshed and you're driving it down the road feeding it the onions, and making her scream, you're spinning that bearing far quicker than it was ever designed to go. It's only ever designed to go, you know, slowly, but it wasn't. So I've got in there with the file and cleaned it all out, and I put some lithium grease in, and now I'm going to build it back up. There's a master spline on this, so it'll only go in one position. So there are a few main components of the clutch system we're going to talk about while we're in the middle of it, because you wouldn't believe how many people don't know how it works. So first of all, we've got the cover plate, which is essentially a giant spring that compresses this against the surface of the center plate or friction plate. Now the friction plate has got springs in it to dampen the force when you release the clutch pedal, and then you've got the thrust bearing itself there, which is the bearing that rides inside there. So how does it work? The cover clamps the friction plate against the flywheel with a tremendous amount of force, and then when you engage your foot on the clutch, it pushes the release bearing against the spring of the cover plate, which depresses the spring, which is concave or convex, I forget which one, which releases the clamping force of the plate and allows the center plate to spin, and that gives you your semi-permanent, non-permanent neutral when you're changing gear or starting off. So when you're got your foot on the clutch, this plate is spinning and the drive is not getting transferred to the cover plate. When you release the clutch, the spring then clamps the cover plate against the friction plate and the flywheel and allows drive to be transferred. So the cover plate is bolted on, and I did clean the back of the cover plate with some brake cleaner to get the oil off, and I test fitted the friction plate on the end of the gearbox to make sure the splines meet up, because you got to do that, because I didn't do it once and it didn't work out the best for me. So I always do that now. So we bolted it all on, and I'd just like to say, you don't need proper alignment tools. You've got, just have a good look at it. If it's in a straight line, it works. Hook your eyes on there, have a squint at it, make sure it's in a straight line. As long as it's straight, that's all you're after. So you don't need a posh alignment tool. I never use one anyway. Ta-da! So now the gearbox is back in with the new clutch in instead of the old knackered one, and now it's just reverse order of everything I did to take it out to put it back in again. Happy days. So Cody's on a little welding project. You're making patterns and cutting plates, aren't you, mate? Yeah. For Fonzie, who's doing a little job here. Oh, beautiful. That's nice. Just a bit of MOT welding while I'm working on the Punto. So, yeah, nice. So you got the dog bone mount all on and tightened up. Now we're going to get these bolts in and the drive shaft and the rear stabilizer back on. Mega. So I've lined the drive shafts up and now we've got to get them back in the gearbox. So I've got to pull the arm down and just give them a turn. And there she goes, she's back in. And then line the ball joint up. And there we go. Same on this side. She's back in. I'll pull the arm down. Give it a twist. Back in. Ball joint in. Tap them in. Nuts and bolts. Minty mint. Just about to put the bottom ball joint bolts back in, and I noticed that I nipped this one on the end with the hammer and damaged it slightly. Now you've got to be on form with these things and notice that before you try and wind the nut on, because all you'll do is destroy the thread. So we noticed it, we ground the end down a little bit, took it off, run the thread chaser on it, and now I can put it in. Hang the bolt back through now. Screw the nut on. Got the Ugga Dugga set to just tight enough for Fiat. Mint. Don't worry, I will be going around and checking there to manufacturer's spec, but I'll do that later because it's boring. The shafts are in, bottom arms are on, and now we're putting the oil in, the golden juice, and then I can drop it down and do everything on the top and we're good. Right now, wheels are on, oil is in, put the engine mount on proper, got to get the top bell housing bolts in, gear linkages, slave cylinder, air strap, reverse light wiring, and we're all good. Fonzie's still welding away, but some of our friends have sent us a real treat. Look at that, mint. Thank you very much to Sally and Seth down at the set for sorting us out for some food. Mint. Ploughing it in, ploughing it in. Right, anyway, back to this. We got the gear linkages on and all that fun stuff. Now it's time to put the clutch slave cylinder on, and it's a hydraulic item and it works by magic. So, but when you're fitting it, it's got this ball in here and then a horseshoe shaped thingy majiggy on the end of it, and you got to make sure that that is precisely lined up to go over the end of the arm that sticks out there, or you'll get it all on there and put your foot on the clutch and noises, crunching and braking will happen, and that's not what you want at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. So we just want to get it on there and have it operational. So the pieces of the puzzle are coming together, and it's all looking pretty minty. Operate the pedal, Cody. Operate the pedal. Yeah, pump it. Operate the gears, forwards and backwards and stuff, and side to side. Men. So this is a good opportunity before you put the battery and everything back in to make sure everything is operating as it should. We've just had to bleed the clutch slave cylinder, so it was lucky we didn't carry on. So we checked everything, found we had a problem. We've had to bleed the cylinder because when the thrust bearing failed, the actual pedal has gone down and it has pushed the slave cylinder piston quite too far out, and it's got full of air. So we got it back in there, re-bled it, and now she's mint again, and we didn't have to buy a new one, so I'm happy about that. So always check it as you're going along. So now it's the moment of truth. Have all our efforts been worthwhile? The battery's on and we're ready to go. We'll get the key. There's the key. We'll get the key. We'll get the key and we'll have a go. So first of all, we're going to see, will it start? And then we're going to see, does the clutch work? The lights are on.
Really kind of capable.
Stop it, Fonzie, you're not funny. Oh, we've got a clutch pedal. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, and reverse. Full house. Oh, she's perfect. What a result. Hang on, it's cold, let me wind the window up. Marvellous, we're back on the road. My mum's car is restored to its former glory and everyone's happy. We just gotta, don't forget to reset the time. And that's it. Got them other little bits and bobs to do. So if you like this video, I'll do a video on doing some other stuff as well. If it don't fit, don't force it.